Morning folks, it's 22nd of October 2019 today. I'm Sane, and today we're going to talk about the protests that have been happening across the Middle East and Latin America. And 4 or 5 protests have happened all in 1 month, which has been very hard for me to just keep track of with regards to every single specific event. And I've been trying to compile the material for this video for the past few days. Well, for the past few days now, and that in itself has been, like I said, really hard, because it's like it's like the Hydra. You cut one head off, everything else starts respawning all over the damn place. But we are going to actually have to, drop on and dissect each and every single news piece. So, firstly, Ecuador. This is one of the protests that has happened early in the month, which has stopped. Well, it was more or less has finished around 14th October. So I've written an article on my own WordPress blog talking about what's happened at the start of the protests, and the cause of that is because the government was making proposals to cut down the subsidies, and there was a curfew and the usual crap happened in the process. The reaction was was not a pretty nice one, to be honest. And if you, as you can see on in this part of the video, you can see that they had to try and make cutbacks, austerity measures, just to secure international monetary fund loan that was worth around $4 billion US, just to save some money. But you know how poor Latin American countries are, and when they take a stand, they don't fuck about in terms of taking a stand. And that's the one thing you do have to give credit for the folks in Latin America. They're very passionate when it comes to things like this. So anyway, with regards to the protests, excuse me, just over a week ago, it actually eventually finished, because one of the indigenous groups actually sat down with the Ecuadorian government, including Lenin Moreno himself, just to try and strike a deal, which they eventually did. But yeah, that was eventually solved. So there's that. And what the, Wayback Machine is not working nicely here. Sod it. Here, someone else on Twitter reacted to that. Paste and go there. Someone by the name of Ethan Saron reacted to this, saying that Lenin Moreno, who's supported by US Secretary of State Michael Pompeo, is sacrificing the poor to satisfy the IMF, which is basically what he's guilty of. And he's called. Lenin Moreno was rightly called out for that. So there you go. But that's all I'm done so far. For what I could tell, I couldn't find anything else that's new in regards to Ecuador, so hopefully that's sorted itself out. Now, I've also written another article on my WordPress blog, and this time is about Lebanon and Chile, 2 countries that have been ravaged by protests. And yeah, so the short story, what I've written on there was before the continuation of the protests that happened. So on the first part of this article, Lebanon economic reforms and the WhatsApp tax. So the Lebanese protesters obviously didn't take too kindly to taxes and all that nonsensical crap, especially the social media tax, which includes WhatsApp. Scott Christians covered this part in his protest video, which I'll show you later. I won't be playing it, but because it's 20 minutes long, which you should be able to watch yourself. But I'm kind of bloody late. It's literally 15 years. So, but anyway, Lebanese protesters weren't too happy with taxes, so they protested. They got that swiftly reversed, but as you see, things have been continuing on for the past few days now, and Chile's also had issues as well with regards to economic struggles as well, just like Lebanon. But what really ticked off the Chilean civilians is the rising transport affairs, well, which was the catalyst for this crap as well. So they weren't happy, but at the time of me writing this, which I wrote on October the 18th, the government were making remarks, or came out and basically supported the rising fares, and that they wouldn't back down initially. But like I said, things have happened. Things have taken a turn for the worse for the most part, and it just turned to a worldly shithouse, really. So there you go. So yeah, in another article I want to basically run through, Barbara Hammers sent me this through PM, personal message obviously, so, and she's had a few things to say about what's happening in Lebanon, and we're basically conversing with each other on the subject matter at hand in regards to whether Lebanon was literally a legitimate protest, or whether it's been whether there's nefarious parties at hand. And to be honest, I understand the concerns with regards to what's going on, or whether the Lebanese protests are wholly legitimate or have chinks in the armour that allow nefarious political forces to step in and get their hands grotty and dirty for basically hijacking it. So she's concerned about that, and like I said, I see where she's coming from, especially when you see stories like this. The US official meets with the Lebanese PM over anti-Hezbollah sanctions. So this has happened not too long ago, reportedly on the 20th of September 2019. So let's read this article then. A senior US Treasury official visited Beirut on Monday to sell Lebanon on recent US sanctions targeting Iranians supported or backed a Hezbollah group, Lebanon's central bank governor said. Treasury Department Assistant Secretary Marshall Billingsley met with the Prime Minister and the Speaker of Parliament, as well as officials from the Association of Banks in Lebanon and the central bank governor. Central Bank Chief Riyad Salameh played down reports in local media that the US would impose further sanctions on Lebanon's dollar-strapped banking system, saying that Billingsley is quote, not coming here to squeeze Lebanon. A statement from the US Embassy in Lebanon said that Billingsley would, encouraged the Lebanese government to distance itself from Hezbollah and, quote, other malign actors attempting to destabilize Lebanon and its institutions. Hezbollah, that is considered a terrorist organization by both Israel and the USA, is also a major political actor in Lebanon and a key government backer in war-torn Syria. Hezbollah holds 3 cabinet seats and, along with its allies, has more power than ever in the parliament and government. It's also amongst the most effective armed groups in the region, extending Iran's influence to Israel's doorstep. Domestically, the group's power exceeds that of the Lebanese armed forces. Last month, the Treasury's official of foreign assets control sanctioned Jamal Trust Bank, accusing of acting as a key financial institution for Hezbollah. The Treasury said the bank was used for enabling the Iranian proxy group's financial activities, quote, including sending payments to families of suicide bombers, end quote. The bank denied the US charges about, quote, knowingly facilitating banking activities, end quote, for Hezbollah operations, while the Association of Banks in Lebanon assured the public the US sanctions wouldn't affect the country's banking sector. However, less than a month after the measures were announced, the Jamal Trust Bank self-liquidated. The Lebanese state-run national news agency quoted Salameh as saying last week that the value of the bank's assets and of its contribution to the National Deposit Guarantee Body was sufficient, quote, in principle, to pay back all deposits and fulfill obligations. Iran-backed Hezbollah has been a US-designated terrorist group since 1997 and fights alongside the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in the neighbouring country's civil war. It's Tehran's most potent proxy on the regional scene and also wields significant influence in Lebanese politics. One of a handful of Shiite-owned Lebanese banks, JTB had specialised in microcredit in remote areas of the country's Shiite majority south, which is also Hezbollah's heartland. For years, the US has imposed sanctions on officials from Hezbollah, which Washington considers a terrorist organization, and in July the US targeted a Hezbollah security official and 2 members of Lebanon's parliament suspected of using their positions to further the aims of the Iran-backed terrorist organization and, quote, bolster Iran's malign activities, end quote. In 2011, the Treasury Department accused the Lebanese Canadian Bank of laundering money from drugs and other operations for clients tied to Hezbollah. 2 years later, the bank agreed to pay US authorities $102 million to settle the charges. Most of the assets most of the assets of the Lebanese Canadian Bank were later acquired by the Lebanese subsidiary of France's Société Générale. Okay. The takeaway message is that the US has had a history of targeting Lebanese banks that are suspected of being linked with Hezbollah. And like I said, Aunt Bibi sent me this, and I had a look at it, and I can see, like I said, I can see why she sent this in the first place. And speaking of that, she also talked about Wesley Clark's 7 countries in 5 years, which Lebanon was targeted, or is mentioned in this little speech by Wesley Clark himself. But anyway, let's march on. I was also sent these 2 tweets, one from Al and another one from Mohammed Khalid Al Yahya. Funny how this obsession with the Hezbollah has come out in full force when it comes to Lebanon and the whole and the protests surrounding it. Here it goes. The fig leaf covering the Hezbollah ruling order in Lebanon is crumbling. Autumn has come. Okay, Madam Suzley, aka Partisan Girl. A few others have been calling this out. Starting to lose my voice here. Okay. You get the freaking idea. Why is this turning to a massive hard-on for Hezbollah when the Lebanon protests are reportedly being about financial struggles and all that jazz? Seems fishy to me. Okay, here's another one by another tweet by L, or she goes by that name, and here, iconic images of women in uprisings from Sudan, Iraq, and Lebanon. Okay, yeah, that's a bit of a weird one. Yeah, there is this weird fascination on certain people or certain genders, sort of like someone said that how identity politics is being used as a tool to push agendas or events, or that's what. Excuse me, I've been drinking too much, but yeah. So that was another tweet that was sent to me. So I'm looking at it. I can see, like I said, I can see where Aunt Bibi's coming from in regards to protests and how certain women, children are being used for political events or agendas. So again, I understand the skepticism. Yeah, I understand the concerns in that regard as well. Now, another article here. Head of Lebanese pro-US party orders minister to resign from cabinet. Oh boy. Yeah, there are a few pro-US politicians in the Lebanese cabinet, and I just really don't know what the heck to say about this. And then it's just that when you read some of these events and look into them, you do think to yourself whether they have got illegitimate intentions or whether there's bound to be something else brewing in the background that's going to cause even more havoc than what's already on stage. But you can read most of these articles yourself, because it's just a mess. It really is just a mess right now. But that's all I've got to say on that. And then Saad Nasrallah came out and said that he was opposed to government resignations and that he won't let anyone burn down Lebanon. So he's obviously not pleased about this horrible situation. But the TLDR is that he wants shit to get better, really. That's my TLDR from what I've seen on this bloody article. What else? And then what's happened a few days ago is that Saad Hariri was not happy with the situation as well. It states that he's given a 72-hour ultimatum from October 18th, and that's like 4 days gone now. So he's not. He's obviously naturally displeased about the whole protests. So they've since made moves, but and on top of that, there's also accusations of there being a fifth column here. Lebanon. Okay, I'll read this part. Foreign pressure. Speaking on Friday, Lebanon's Foreign Minister Gebran Bassil warned that he'll resign if the government fails to approve a budget before October 31st. The Foreign Minister also warned of a, quote, fifth column seeking to provoke further tension in these heady days. He didn't further elaborate on the subject, and the leader of the Arab Tawhid Party, Riyad Wahab, also claimed that, quote, foreign elements were seeking to pressure Hariri to resign. Increasing financial pressure on Lebanon comes as US sanctions allegedly targeting individuals and international organizations that do business with the Hezbollah resistance movement has had a negative effect on the country's economy. Riyadh, which has welcomed the US sanctions, naturally, issued a notice on Friday calling for its citizens to leave the country. That paragraph is pretty interesting. Yeah. Do I need to say more? Go on. Okay, what else do we have here? What the bloody hell do we have here? Okay. Yeah, protests is been continuing. Gee, what a bloody surprise. Sputnik News has also gave their coverage on the situation as well. Yeah. Lebanese Christian Party ministers resigned from government amid protests. Samir Gigir has resigned from that. So, yeah. You can pause the video and have a look at this yourself in your own time, or just go to the links here, which will be at the end of the show. Well, end of the video, excuse me, but yeah. That's that. Next one. The good thing about this, well, is that Lebanese government won't introduce new taxes. They've also actually decided to let the ministers take the financial hit instead due to the protests. Again, these people are not, the protesters are not messing around here in terms of not wanting to deal with that crap as well. Lebanon is another country that's been hit with financial struggles as well. But, yeah. So there's that. You can read, like I said, most of these articles you can read in your own time, because if I read all of them here, we'll be here for hours. So yeah. But unfortunately, though, yeah. Okay, those two articles are linked together. Here, Lebanese government wants to introduce new taxes, and then you got the cutting the salaries of MPs and ministers in half. They agree with the final budget without additional taxes in response to the protests. But during that time, they're arresting protesters and, well, eventually released them due to the absolute shithouse of the scenario that is the protests. And then Sputnik also wrote this article. Actually, let me move the chest back. There you go. Yeah, I'll read this one. Might as well. Seems right here, which is posted today actually. Well, gee, what a surprise. Lebanese government approved 17-point economic plan in a bid to defeat protests. The Lebanese government has endorsed a 17-point economic reform plan, including measures to resolve the electricity crisis. Oh, there's another issue that they've been having as well. Services being in shitstorm, being an absolute horrible nightmare as well. Anyway, moving swiftly on from my ramblings. Let's start there again actually. The Lebanese government has endorsed a 17-point economic reform plan, including measures to resolve the electricity crisis in the hope of addressing demands of mass protests that have been ravaging the country since the previous week, the presidential office said on Monday. Prime Minister Saad Hariri unveiled a package of economic measures at the government's session in the Babda presidential palace. It came amid the anti-government rallies in Beirut and across the country that have been underway since Thursday, with the demonstrators demanding that the government resign and action be taken to cope with the worsening economic situation. The rallies were initially caused by the government's plans to raise money from a tobacco tax and internet calls, but later escalated into violence. The office noted, the Council of Ministers has approved a reform plan and is now discussing the last item related to electricity, the Lebanese President's office wrote on Twitter. The office noted that the atmosphere is calm and the debate process is positive, with the reform plan comprising of 17 points. And after discussing the reform plan, the Council also approved a draft budget for 2020. The PM stressed that the next budget would also have a 0.6% deficit and wouldn't include any new taxes. The government will also boost support for the poorest families. Lebanon's power sector has long been facing a crisis, particularly in the area of electricity supplies. And before the Lebanese the Lebanese civil war lasting from 1975 to 1990, 11 major power plants supplied most of the country's electricity, as they were connected in a common distribution network. During the war, the energy sector was seriously damaged. Between 1992 and 2002, the Lebanese Council for Development and Reconstruction launched a rehab plan, dubbed the Power Sector Master Plan, which proved to be ineffective as the demand exceeded the supply. And the electricity generation capacity in Lebanon still doesn't meet the demand, with power blackouts being common across the country, coupled with high tariffs. Yeah, sums up the shiteness of the Lebanese economy and electricity woes. Got another article here. Lebanese protesters block roads in Beirut amid general strike. So more of this crap's going to be common unless things improve. And another article: UAE decides to set up a headquarters to send their own Emiratis home from Lebanon amid the ongoing protests. Not a surprise considering how messy the situation is down there. So yeah, they want to get out of this mess as soon as possible, physically of course. But that's all for now. That's all I've got to say on this situation. As I bet you there's going to be more updates as the days go on, especially with Chile as well, which we're going to come to in a few moments. So anyway, on to Chile. Chile protests, yeah. For something that has been caused by financial struggles. The rising transport fares have been literally the catalyst that's caused this to happen, apparently. Feed dead in supermarket fire as clashes continue. Yeah, and obviously Sebastian Pinera, Chile's president, suspended the rising metro fares because protests. Oh, like I said, when the shit gets tough, the civilians, they can be really passionate. Unfortunately though, it's something can get really violent in the process. Yeah. Oh God. So the BBC, Sputnik News and the Guardian's reported on the death toll for that. So it went from 3 being dead in the supermarket to 10 being dead according to local authorities. And then the Guardian came out and said, oh well, 11's dead. So yeah, shit's got real and shit's got tough. And then you got the state of emergency status being called out for, well, yeah, being declared basically. I forgot I forgot what the word I was looking for, but yeah, since the state of emergency has been declared, protests have just got worse and worse. Here's another article. State of emergency declared. Shit's on fire. More shit on fire, really, and trouble. And then the New York Times has given its 2 cents on the matter in the form of a report. So yeah, jeez. And since then, yeah, soldiers patrol Chile. Naturally, that's going to happen because protests. When things do happen, when protests get out of hand, expect the armed forces to just patrol. And then Sputnik News is reporting on the protesters voicing government injustices. I can't even pronounce that word. I can't even. But alright, they've been voicing their government issues, and they're just generally displeased with the state of the government, really. And they want Sebastian Pinera gone because they feel he's not doing enough to actually help improve the state of Chile. So I'm not freaking surprised, to be honest. What a bloody nightmare. So much so that curfews have been imposed during the protests. Well, or during the peak of that period, but so that's, like I said, the situation in Chile has gotten really horrible as well. And curfews and more curfews. Oh, dear God. Before I head off though, Scott Creighton's done a video on the protests. He's forgot to mention Ecuador, but he's beaten me to the finishing line in that regard. And I think he's doing a good job on this video, like he always does. You should go check that video out while you're at it, because he talks about what's happening around the world in terms of the protests. So yeah, like I said, you should check out his video, and also say hi to him and his mother, because his mother's been going through shit as well, horrible shit. So actually, come to think of it, here's his channel, Church Dog 42, and Aunt Beaver's got her on. What the? She's got her own YouTube channel here, so I suggest you check both of them out. So massive hat tip to her and him and another person who's actually gave me the links to the Chile protests. So he's what's kicked that off. So you should check him out as well. Editors. Like so, let me repeat that. You should check him out. Editors. Aunt BB and Church Dog 42, because they've done tremendous work, and he's the one who's been persistently PMing content as well. So thanks to him as well. That's all I'm gonna say on the matter, because like I said, all this is it's just been an absolute mindfuck of massive proportions, especially if we're just taking a backseat and being an armchair political commentator. So where do you start and where do you finish? I'll admit that this video is a bit of a struggle for me to put together. It took me like an hour to actually finalise the links and stuff as it is. I'm trying to rehearse what to say on the video is just a bloody pain in the arse. So I'm just honestly, to the people who are suffering, oh, I can't spell apparently. That's brilliant job. But anyway, to those who are suffering the protests, my heart goes out to these people, especially with regards to the economic situation and their well-being, because it's nasty being in a bit of a hectic war zone like situation. So yeah, that's all. Like I said, it's just, other than that, there's not much else to say in terms of positivity, because there's not much to be positive about in terms of protests. So I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and as always, I'll see you next time. Sayonara.